What's up, guys? Welcome to the season 1 finale of Talkin Hawkins, our Stranger Things review, guys. My name is Kyle, your host. Welcome to Project Potter. If you haven't been here before, guys, go check out the other content on the channel. I appreciate you guys stopping by. If you haven't seen the series before, what we do is my thoughts on the episode here. We do a Hawkins hero, which is my favorite character, a mouth breather or breathers, which is my least favorite character, and a score out of 10, guys, to kind of wrap it up. There are some things I really liked in this episode, so some things I hated in this episode. Starting with the things I really liked, guys. Chief Hopper, once again, David Harbour just crushes this role. I didn't mention it last episode. Hopper and Joyce go to the facility, and we find out, kind of get intentionally caught to get into the facility. Hopper's like, yo, I know everything. He's like, my buddy with the Times. I told him all the information. He's like, I know you do experiments on kids when your experiments got out or whatever. And he's like, I know you're trying to cover everything up, cover up the tracks, because he went a little too far this time. And they're like, oh shit, he does know everything. And they keep tasing him. And he's like, let me get Will Byers in here, and then we will just go our separate ways, and you guys will forget any of this happened. We know, obviously, it's not that simple. The Upside Down was really, really cool visually. It's Hopper and Joyce in there for most of it. I love just like the dark blue aesthetic with like all the almost like spores from Last of Us that are going around in there. That was really, really cool. I would have liked a little bit more to happen in the Upside Down, but I thought that their presence being in there, having to put on the protection, was good. In terms of things I did not like, guys, the cinematography is horrific in this episode. It was like 25 minutes straight of strobe lights. And I was like, it doesn't affect me. They do put a warning at the beginning. It says like photosensitive viewers, this might affect you. It didn't affect me, but my eyes were starting to hurt a little bit after there's like 20 minutes straight of the scene behind me where Eleven takes down the Demogorgon. It was just like flashing lights the whole time. And it was so distracting. And like, I almost like didn't want to look at it because it was just so, there was no break. And then it's flashing and flashing. And I guess they were trying to show that like the Demogorgon is here. So it's like kind of messing up the worlds, but we could have done that in different ways, guys. And I just did not like that. Hopper selling out the kids. I mean, he's like, oh, well, just let me get Will Byers with Joyce, and like it's all good. And I'm like, okay, he's gonna give them like a fake address. Dude, they're at the middle school with Elle, and then he just gives them the address, and the bad guys just show up. And I was like, dude, you just sold them out to try and get Will Byers? Like, do you not care about these kids? We just had that scene with 11 last episode in the gym, and like now you're just like, you know what? Those kids are over at the middle school. Like, go get them. It's like, that was surprising from Hopper, and I thought that was out of character for him. Obviously, he didn't know that 11 was like gonna fuck everyone up. I also don't like that 11 kills all the bad guys. I know they're bad guys, but 11 straight up like murders people by them bleeding through their eyes. It's badass, but it's like homicidal. And I was like, are we sure 11's a good guy or a good girl in this case? She murders like 10 people, like right away, because they're cornered, and she's like, oh, I'm just going to murder everyone, watch. But then that blood is what brings the Demogorgon, so that's crazy, and the Demogorgon is cool. But it was also like cheap effects with the flashing lights where you don't ever see clearly the Demogorgon. And it's like, I understand they probably couldn't get the budget at the time. Stranger Things, I don't know. I know it was big first on Netflix. I don't know by the time season 1 finale came out, like if their budget, I'm sure they made it well in advance, so they probably didn't have the biggest budget for the finale. And it kind of shows here where it's just cheap effects, and that was kind of weird. Going back to stuff I did like, guys, though, I will say the whole stuff in the house where Nancy and Jonathan are in there and they set up the bear trap to like get out of the police station, but it's like, it's fine. Hopper's like, it's all good, dude. And then the kid who pissed his pants is over there, and he's like, there was a girl in a shaved head and she can do things. And he's like, what do you mean do things? And Hopper's like trying to always get answers out of people. And he's like, cut the bullshit, dude. He's like, just tell me what's going on. And so they get out, but Jonathan, Nancy, and then the unexpected trilogy of Steve showing up there, which is great. And he's like, whoa. He's like, are you okay? Is your hand okay, Nance? He's like, what are you doing here? He's like, whoa. He comes in there and they're like, Steve, you need to leave right now, because they're like expecting the Demogorgon. They put the gasoline down. I love how Steve comes in. He's like, is that gasoline? He's like, what is that? He's like, is there a bear trap there? He's like, what's going on? And like, it's coming. He's like, what's coming? Steve was really good comedic relief in here, and he is like really afraid. And I love how Nancy and Jonathan are like, dude, if you're going to be a bitch, you got to go. And then Steve like goes to leave, and he's like fumbling his keys. And then he goes in there, he sees the lights are flashing, and he comes back in and like hits the Demogorgon. And he's like, wait, I'm not going to be afraid of this thing. And I love just their trio of like Steve, Jonathan, Nancy. It's really nice. the whole Hopper and Joyce being in the Upside Down and literally being in like the same room, and they could tell when Jonathan has a moment where he's like, "Mom," and she's like, "Jonathan," and it's like they have that connection. It's so cool. I love that, and I love how the lights are moving and the Demogorgon just pieces out. I guess they injured it, which is cool because they do set it on fire, which doesn't kill it, but they injure it, and then that's kind of, I was gonna say that's what helps Joyce and Hopper get it, but they don't fight the Demogorgon. He stays in the real world, and then Elle has to take him down, which I thought was weird. I thought they were kind of setting up where like they would injure the Demogorgon in the real world, and then Joyce and Hopper would defeat it, and then they find Will. But let's just say, guys, they find Barb, and she is once again dead. You know, all you guys who like we saw Barb with a slug in her head, her mouth. Hey, maybe she's still alive. Nah, we're gonna reconfirm that bitch is dead. And I was like, great job, everyone. Really good job. Everyone who wants Barb to come back, they're like, nah, dude, we're gonna make sure that she's dead. But then there's a really gross scene with Will where she's like, oh my God, Will, and it's like, wow, it's a crazy moment. And he's got like this gross slug in his mouth, and it's so disgusting. And the way they do it, and Hopper like pulls it out. I didn't even mention, guys, the heart of this episode really is we had snippets of Hopper's late daughter, and we get just, oh my God, dude, just some heartbreaking scenes in this one where it's kind of introduced where he's having like a nice moment with his daughter. They're in the park. He's like, I'm gonna eat you and whatever, and it's like just a normal family moment. And then she like starts having like a breathing attack, and he's like, hey, what's wrong? And it's like, oh my God, it's so devastating. And I don't know if she has like a rare disease or what happens, but then like the next time we get flashbacks, she's like in the hospital and she's lost her hair, and it's clear that she's not doing well. Hopper is just like slowly watching her deteriorate. And when they find Will, she's like, oh my God. And this is weird because Joyce and Hopper take off their helmets, and it's like, dude, they told you, I mean, the CIA guys told you, and they're bad dudes, but they're like, you shouldn't go in there, or like when you go in there, you got to wear the suit because the atmosphere is toxic. And then they wear the suit the whole time, and then at the end they just take the suit helmet off. And now I get it that the emotions are running high, and you finally found Will, and it's like, holy shit. But dude, it's like, hey, leave your helmet on, Joyce and Hopper, okay? But she's like, oh my God, he's not breathing. And because after they pull a slug out there, and he's like, Jesus, and he shoots it. And then Hopper is like hitting him. He's like, come on, kid, breathe. And he's like, it's a great job of flashing back to his daughter, who he watched his daughter die. As the heartbeat stops and his daughter's flashback, Will like breathes into life. And he's like so relieved. And it's like, what a shot, dude, where he's like sitting there and Joyce is holding Will. And it's like, again, their helmets are off, super weird. I don't love the fact that happened because it doesn't make sense, and they're probably infected now or whatever, but that's all really cool. And then at the end, guys, Hopper, of course, like he gets out and they see Will and everyone hugs Will, and it's like, oh, it's so great. And car pulls up, and then Hopper's like, and he like gets in the car. We get a month flash forward. The kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is great from the first episode. And then they're like, fireball him. And they're like, oh, and he dies. And Mike's got a scene and everything. And it's great, but Mike is clearly missing 11. He's super sad about that. We do get a great shot of Hopper leaving, and then he's like, oh, they're like, it's Christmas time, and I love Christmas time, dude. So it's always like, I feel like you could put Christmas time on anything and it would be great. Hopper's like putting a bunch of food in a Tupperware, and they're like, oh, Hopper, you leaving already? And he's like, oh, you think I want to come to this thing? He's like, no, I'm just hungry. And I'm like, immediately I was like, you're bringing that to someone. And so he puts a whole bunch of like sausages or whatever in a Tupperware, gets in the car, and then he drives out to like a side road, opens up like a little box, puts the Tupperware in there. And then, guys, he puts a couple of Eggos on there. And that's when you're like, oh my God. Oh, so when 11 kills the Demogorgon, she like uses all of her energy or whatever to dissipate or whatever. Hopper is taking care of 11 there. We don't know how yet. That's obviously set up season 2. And then the last scene, guys, we get is when Will is home and he's like, oh, I just gotta wash my hands. And then he's like, oh, actually, Mom, what I meant is I'm gonna go in the bathroom and throw up a slug. And then when that happens, not only is a slug gonna come out of my body down the drain, but we're gonna go into the upside down. And he's like, oh shit. And then he comes out and goes sits at the dinner table, and she's like, yeah, right. And he's like, yeah, it's all good. And then he's like, so we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, we're going to talk about this, Will? But yeah, that is the season 1 finale. The Hawkins hero for this one, guys, I'm going to go with Nancy, actually. Nancy's so badass in this, and obviously she's adorable and beautiful. And although I am kind of sad to see her with Steve at the end, it's kind of funny, guys, because they mess with your expectations, right? Where first you see Nancy and Steve, and they're adorable, right? And I mentioned that in a review where I was like, oh, these two are great. Their chemistry is palpable. It's great. They sleep together. Obviously, there's a connection there. And then Steve is a jerk, and he tries to apologize, and she's not having it, and she's focused on Jonathan, and she realizes that Jonathan isn't as bad. And then they have, like I mentioned in one of the past review guys, they have like a life-threatening experience where they are forever bonded. And so at the end, Nance gives him a present, and she's like, "Oh, here you go. It's just a little something." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't get you anything. I'm sorry." And she's like, "It's okay." And then he gets in the car, and Will is like, "Oh, it's pretty cool. It's a new camera. Very nice." And Steve is like, and then Nancy goes down to sit down, and she's next to Steve, and they like cuddle up. And I was like, ah, man, because I wanted, I wanted Steve and Nancy initially. Then I was digging the Jonathan Nancy vibes, and I thought that she had gotten over Steve. And then it's kind of weird that they went on this like adventure, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm just going to be with Steve again." And I was like, that feel. And I love Joe Keery, and Steve Harrington is great, especially the way he like kind of has his redemption in the finale here, and he comes over and fights with them. But I was like, that feels like we took a step backwards with Nancy, where she was attracted to Steve, then she got badass in her own, felt like kind of had a connection with Jonathan, and then she just went back to Steve. And it's like after Jonathan made fun of her for being the boring suburban chick or whatever. So I'm like, I don't love that. But overall, guys, Nancy is badass. Natalia Dyer is beautiful. She's just really strong character. I love her interactions with pretty much everyone in the series. I love how she like hugs Mike, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're okay." And he's like, "Okay." It's like a sisterly thing. There's also obviously a scene I didn't touch on, guys, with Mike and 11, where he says, "Let's go to Snowball," and it's like someone you like, and he kisses 11 and all that stuff. But yeah, guys, Nancy is great. It's interesting to see how she plays off of Jonathan and how she plays off of Steve and her mom, who's trying to get her to listen and stuff. I will say, guys, it is weird that we don't get any other parents beside. We get the Wheelers, right? Karen, and then we get Joyce, but we don't see Lucas's parents, and we don't see Dustin's parents the whole season, which is really strange. And there's like a scene where they're at the middle school at the end, and Mike's mom comes up and like hugs him, and I'm like, where are the rest of the parents? Like, do you think they would all be coming over? But anyway, guys, that's not really for this segment. That this is to say how badass Natalia Dyer is, and how beautiful she is, and how awesome she is. And I just love how they set up the bear trap and the gasoline, and she's not really afraid. And she's telling Steve when he shows up, like, "Yo, you better fight or you gotta leave." Like, she's like, this isn't, we're not playing around anymore. So she's awesome. Natalia is awesome. Nancy, the character, is awesome. And so can't wait to see more of her going forward. And she is my favorite character for the season 1 finale. Okay, guys, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the mouth breather for the season 1 finale is Chief Hopper. And let me preface this. I love David Harbour, and his acting is on display here. And the reason he's getting my mouth breather for this one is because I thought was building a relationship with these kids, but he's kind of just a little selfish here, where he's just on his own journey, and he's almost like trying to save Will because he couldn't save his daughter. That's fine, but he sells out the kids at the middle school. And again, I don't understand why he did that, why he didn't give them a fake address or something, because I thought he would have been like, "Oh, I bought you some time so that you guys can escape," or whatever. But they just show up. The CIA just shows up or Papa's crew just shows up at the middle school. And I'm like, Hopper, why did you just give them the real location, dude? Like, they could have checked it or something. But also the CIA giving him and Joyce just access to the Upside Down is weird. And they're like, "Oh, what if he finds the boy?" And they're like, "That's not going to happen." But it's like, they give them the suits, and then they kind of just let them in there. And I guess they're sketchy, so they're fine. They don't like tell them about the dangers or anything. But it was weird to me that they were just like, "Oh, you guys can just go in." And I was like, "Oh, that seems weird." But yeah, Chief Hopper, even though I love his tragic story of us like finally seeing his daughter, and how his daughter dies in the flashback, and we like got hints of that, and Joyce knows about it. And for the two of them to go on that journey, that was great. But I was just really disappointed. It felt so out of character for Hopper to sell them out like that, where it worked out. But that's because 11 had to, go nuts and kill a bunch of people and then kill the Demigorgon. He basically put these kids in danger of dying, and 11, and basically gave 11 back to the bad people. It just doesn't feel like something Hopper would do. He's been one step ahead the whole series. And for him to just be like, "Oh yeah, they're at the middle school," I was like, that seemed weird. So it's not his acting skills. It is just a situational thing. But Chief Hopper, you are my mouth breather for probably the only time in this series for the season one finale. That brings us to the score. I will say, guys, the cinematography and the constant use of strobe lights takes this one down a lot for me. This is an 8-1. I wish I could like this episode more, but again, it's like there's no break, guys. It's like 20-25 minutes of like straight strobe lights, and I was just like getting a headache, dude. I was like, I don't know who decided this, but like give me a little bit of strobe lights for the horror effects, because it works really well in horror. But then take a break. 11 defeated the Demogorgon, and everything was back to normal. I was like, oh my God, finally, because I just had like a throbbing headache from watching this constant strobe light. I'm like, this isn't a rave, dude. I wish that wasn't such a big part of the episode, because the stuff like the Steve, Nancy, Jonathan fight, the Jonathan to Hopper and Joyce kind of connection there, really awesome stuff. But I just felt like the constant strobes were like kind of a cheap effect, and you could tell maybe they were a little over their head there. The Demogorgon looked awesome, except we saw it a lot of flashing. So it's like they wanted to include it a lot on the screen, but they couldn't quite afford to show it in its full glory. So that I thought was interesting. 11 sacrifice obviously is really important, but then it kind of takes away from the fact where Chief Hopper is obviously giving 11 the Eggos and the food at the end. But I kind of wish that they would have saved that for season 2, because it's like it kind of takes away from 11 sacrifice, where it's a nice teaser and it's cool. It's like, oh, guess what? 11's not dead. But then it's also like you just took away from the moment we saw 10 minutes ago. So yeah, this episode I think is an okay episode. It's a good episode. It ties up a lot of things. Obviously, Will being back is cool, and seeing the kids kind of embrace him. And they're like, oh my God, this happened. And this girl was crying at your funeral. And, this kid peed his pants. And he's like, oh, really? But what sticks out to me like a sore thumb, guys, is that the group is so likable between Lucas, Dustin, and Mike. When Will comes back, it's like Will, it doesn't, I don't know if it's like the actor or what, but he just doesn't have the personality. And maybe it's just his horrendous haircut that he's got. But he comes back and I'm like, it doesn't feel like he's part of the group, And maybe that's because we got him for half of the first episode and he was out the whole season. And so that's not really his fault. It's really a circumstance. But I was just like, I don't know. Will just doesn't, the group fits so well. And then Will just feels like he doesn't really fit. And maybe that's going to go into season 2. But I really like that, like, things are not all well and good. Just because Will's back doesn't mean that the Upside Down is done with him and he's coughing up slugs, and how that's going to play. And I remember a little bit of that for season 2, but a lot of it I don't remember. So I'm excited to explore that. And that's it for season 1. Okay, guys, like I said, season 1 is in the books, guys. So next week we'll be back with the season 2 opener. Thanks for checking out the channel, guys. Thanks for checking out the content. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. Go check out the other content on the channel, and we'll see you guys next Sunday night for the season 2 opener. Peace.